"We're going to skip your housewarming party. My mother-in-law just moved too." Those were the exact words my son Michael wrote in the message that arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. I read that sentence as I finished hanging the white linen curtains in the picture window that looked straight out at the ocean. I just replied, "Okay." They didn't know my house was a $2 million mansion that had belonged to Julian Thorne, a famous TV star. They didn't know anything, and when they saw the photo I posted that same night, my cell phone didn't stop ringing. But I'm going to tell it from the beginning, because this story doesn't start with that message. It starts much earlier, with years of silences I refused to see. Michael's message arrived when my hands still smelled like fresh paint and my knees ached from going up and down ladders. I had worked for weeks to make every corner of this house shine. Every window cleaned until the sun reflected perfectly, every detail thoughtfully arranged. I picked up the phone expecting to see some confirmation from Claire or Michael, some sign that they were coming to the housewarming party I had planned with so much love. What I read left me motionless in front of that picture window I had spent so long choosing. "Mom, I think we're going to skip your housewarming party. Michael's mother-in-law just moved too, and we need to help her with boxes. You understand, right? We'll catch up another day." I read it twice, 3 times. I searched between the lines for some trace of guilt, some real apology, but there was nothing but that dry, cold phrase. I replied with a simple, "Okay," because I couldn't find the strength for anything else. I stood there watching the waves break against the rocks below, feeling that familiar weight settle in my chest again. That weight I had been carrying for so long, it almost felt like a part of me. The house was ready. I had ordered fresh flowers, bought the wine that Michael liked, prepared the lemon pie recipe that Claire always asked for when she was a girl. I had cleaned every surface with my own hands. I had hung those old photos in the hallway, where the 2 of them appeared smiling, hugging me, looking at me as if I were their whole world. How naive I had been to think they would come. How foolish to believe that this time would be different. The dining room table was already set. Cream-colored tablecloths, porcelain plates I had inherited from my mother, crystal glasses that sparkled under the central chandelier. 6 places. 1 for me, 2 for them. 1 for Michael's wife, 1 for Claire's husband, and 1 more for my little granddaughter, who had just turned 4 years old and whom I hadn't seen since her birthday. 6 chairs waiting for bodies that would never arrive. 6 carefully folded napkins that no one would unfold. I walked slowly around that empty table, feeling the silence of the house swallow me whole. Outside, the sea roared softly against the coast, but inside, there was only that heavy, dense emptiness that tightened my throat. I grabbed my phone again and opened Instagram almost without thinking. I'm not one of those people who posts every moment of their life, but something inside me needed to show what I had achieved. I needed someone to see that Eleanor Vance, at 67 years old, had accomplished something beautiful. I took a picture of the picture window with the ocean in the background, another of the hallway with the family photos, 1 more of the patio where the bougainvillea were already starting to climb the white columns. I wrote something simple, "My new home, grateful to life for this blessing." I posted it without thinking too much and left the phone on the table. Not even 10 minutes passed before it started vibrating. First, it was a message from Claire, then another from Michael, then calls, one after another after another. I watched the screen light up and go dark, like a heart that didn't know if it wanted to keep beating. I didn't answer any of them. I sat on the new sofa in front of that giant picture window and let the phone keep ringing while I watched the horizon where the sky met the sea. The notifications didn't stop. Comments, direct messages, more calls. Everyone wanted to know where I had gotten that house, how much I had paid, how it was possible that I lived in a place like that. Because what they didn't know, what nobody knew except my lawyer and me, was that this house wasn't just any house. This $2 million mansion had belonged to Julian Thorne, a TV star famous across America who had died 2 years ago without direct heirs. I had worked for him for almost 15 years as his personal assistant. I took care of him when he got sick. I was with him in his last days. I listened to his stories when no one else wanted to visit him anymore. And he, in an act of gratitude that I still find hard to believe, left me this property in his will. Not all his money, not his bank accounts, just this house facing the sea that he loved so much. The house where he spent his best years, where he wrote his memoirs, where he dreamed of growing old, surrounded by family that never came. When the lawyer gave me the news, I cried for hours. Not because of the value of the property, but because someone, for the first time in a long time, had seen me, had valued me, had recognized everything I had given without asking for anything in return. Julian left me this house because he knew I would take care of it, that I would fill it with life, that I wouldn't turn it into an empty museum, but into a real home. And that was exactly what I had been doing these last 3 months. Turning these walls into my refuge, my space, the place where I could finally breathe without feeling like I owed anyone anything. But now my children wanted to come in. Now that they had seen the photos, now that they knew this wasn't a modest little house in the suburbs, but a luxury mansion with an ocean view, now they wanted to come. Now they had time. Now Michael's mother-in-law could wait. I picked up the phone again and read the messages that kept coming. "Mom, sorry, I think there was a misunderstanding. We can come to your housewarming." "Is that your house? Do you really live there? We need to talk. Call me when you can." Claire wrote almost at the same time. "Mom, I didn't know you had moved to such a big place. Why didn't you tell us? Of course we're coming. Just tell us when, and we'll be there." I left the phone face down on the sofa and closed my eyes. I felt tears welling up behind my eyelids, but I didn't let them fall. Not yet. Because in that moment, something inside me began to shift, something that had been dormant for years. A clear, cold question settled in my mind. How many times had they done this to me before? How many times had I prepared something with excitement only to be left waiting alone? How many excuses had I heard? How many broken promises had I forgiven? I got up from the sofa and walked to the picture window. The sun was already beginning to set, and the sky was turning orange and pink. The waves kept breaking down below, constant, eternal, indifferent to my pain. And then I knew. I knew it with a clarity that hurt my chest like something physical. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was a pattern. A systematic exclusion that I had been ignoring because I was afraid to see the truth. My children hadn't forgotten my housewarming. They just hadn't cared. Not until they saw the value of what I had. I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed on the sofa, watching the dark ocean until the sky began to lighten. And in that long, silent vigil, I began to remember. I didn't want to remember, but the memories came on their own, one after another, like waves you can't stop. I remembered my 65th birthday. I had reserved a table at that Italian restaurant I loved so much, the one with the warm lights and soft music. I invited Claire and Michael 2 weeks in advance. "Of course, Mom. We'll be there," they both said. I bought a new dress, did my hair, arrived half an hour early because I was excited. I waited. The waitress came by 3 times to ask if I wanted to order. I kept saying I would wait a little longer. I checked my phone every 30 seconds. Nothing. No message. No call. 40 minutes later, Michael wrote, "Sorry, Mom, the day got complicated. Let's do it another time." Claire didn't even write. I ate alone that night. The waitress looked at me with pity when I asked her to pack up the birthday cake I had ordered to share. I threw it in the trash when I got home. I remembered my granddaughter's kindergarten graduation, a small but important event. I had bought a gift. I had asked for time off from my job with Julian to attend. I asked Claire 3 times for the time and address. "I'll let you know, Mom," she always said. She never let me know. I saw the photos on Facebook 2 days later. There they all were. Michael and his wife, Claire and her husband, the other grandparents, all smiling around my granddaughter who was holding her diploma. Everyone but me. When I asked Claire what had happened, she said, "Oh, Mom, I thought I sent you the info. It was a mistake. You know how crazy everything is lately. A mistake." That's what she said, and I believed her because I wanted to believe her. I remembered last Christmas. I had cooked for 2 days. Turkey, stuffing, salads, desserts. I decorated my small apartment with lights and a tree that barely fit in the living room. I wrapped gifts with care, choosing something for each of them that I thought they would like. Claire canceled on the morning of the 24th. Mom, my husband's family is insisting we go to their house. You understand, right? They're older and can't travel. Michael canceled an hour later. My mother-in-law isn't feeling well. We'd better just stay home this year. I spent Christmas alone watching old movies. I ate leftovers for a week. The presents stayed under the tree until January, unopened, until I finally put them away in the closet. I remembered when I had my gallbladder surgery 2 years ago. A minor surgery, the doctors told me, but I was scared. I asked Michael to come with me to the hospital. Of course, Mom, count on me, he assured me. The day of the surgery, I waited in the pre-op area. The nurse asked, "Is someone coming with you?" I said yes, that my son was on his way. I kept waiting until they told me it was time to go in. Michael arrived when I was already in recovery, half asleep from the anesthesia. He stayed for 20 minutes. He had to get back to work, he said. Claire never came. She sent flowers the next day with a card that said, "Sorry, Mom, work was impossible." I took a cab home. I climbed the stairs slowly, holding my incision. I was alone for the entire week of recovery. Sharon, my friend from the building where I used to live, was the one who brought me food and helped me change my bandages. I remembered the day I was fired from my previous job before working for Julian. It was unfair, brutal. 30 years at that company, and they let me go without a second thought. I came home destroyed, crying, feeling like my life was falling apart. I called Claire. "Mom, I can't talk right now. I'm in an important meeting. I'll call you later." She never called. I called Michael. "Mom, that sucks, but I'm heading out with some friends right now. Can we talk tomorrow?" He didn't call either. I sat in the living room of my apartment all night, staring at the ceiling, feeling that emptiness I now recognized so well. I remembered all the times I lent them money and they never paid me back. $500 here, $300 there. Things are tough right now. "Mom, I'll pay you back." I stopped counting after the first $3,000. I stopped asking to be paid back because I was embarrassed, because they made me feel stingy, because they were my children and a mother shouldn't be keeping tabs. I remembered when I sold my dad's car, that old Chevy he took care of his whole life. I sold it because I needed money to help Michael with the down payment on his house. "It's an investment in my future, Mom. I'll be grateful forever." He gave me $300 of the $5,000 I lent him. He never mentioned the other $4,700. I remembered all the photos on social media where they appeared at family gatherings I wasn't invited to, birthdays, baptisms, holiday dinners. I would like them from my home, smiling so I wouldn't seem like the bitter mother, commenting sweet things while my chest tightened. "What a lovely gathering," I would write. "You all look so happy," I'd comment. And they would respond with a heart or a quick "Thanks, Mom," with no explanation, no apology, no invitation for the next time. I remembered when I adopted my little dog Luna 3 years ago, a small brown mutt I found on the street. I was so excited I sent photos to both of them. "Look, I won't be so lonely anymore," Claire replied. "Oh, Mom, what a burden. Dogs are so much work." Michael didn't even answer. Luna died last year. A tumor that appeared out of nowhere. I spent all my savings trying to save her. When I finally had to let her go, I cried for days. I wrote to them that Luna had died. Claire sent a sad emoji. Michael wrote, "That's too bad, Ma. That was it." Neither of them asked how I was. Neither of them came to sit with me. Neither of them seemed to understand that I had lost my only real companion. I remembered every phone call cut short. Every "I'll call you back" that never came. Every last-minute canceled plan. Every broken promise. Every long silence when I needed to talk. Every time I felt like I was an extra in my own family. How had I not seen it before? How had I justified every exclusion by telling myself they were busy, that modern life is hard, that they had their own problems? But the truth was simpler and more painful. I was not a priority. I never had been. They only sought me out when they needed something. Money. A favor. Someone to watch the kids when they had no one else. And I always said yes because I thought that was love. I thought being available was the same as being loved. The sun was already high when I finally got up from the sofa. My eyes burned with exhaustion, but my mind was strangely clear. I went to the kitchen and made myself a coffee. I sat on the patio watching the seagulls fly over the sea. And in that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to answer their messages yet. I wasn't going to run and open the door now that I was suddenly interesting. I needed to understand what was really happening. I needed to know if this pattern of exclusion was just carelessness or something deeper, something intentional, because it was one thing to be forgotten by accident. It was another thing entirely to be erased on purpose. And I needed to know the truth. 3 days passed before I answered any messages. 3 days in which the phone never stopped ringing and I did nothing but observe. Observe the patterns. Observe the desperation. Observe how the tone of their words changed as the hours passed. The first day, the messages were friendly. "Mom, what a beautiful house. We should celebrate together. Tell us how you got that place." The second day, there was impatience. "Mom, why aren't you answering? Are you upset? We just want to hear from you." The third day, the manipulation arrived. "Your granddaughter is asking for you. We're worried. We don't know if you're okay. At least tell us you're alive." I read each message with a strange calm, as if I were reading someone else's story, as if those desperate children belonged to someone else and I was just an outside observer trying to understand what was really happening. I realized something important in those 3 days. They never asked how I felt. They never said, "Sorry for canceling your party." They never acknowledged that they had left me alone. They just wanted information. They just wanted to understand how a woman like me, an assistant who earned a modest salary, had ended up living in a $2 million mansion. On the fourth day, I finally replied. I chose my words carefully, like someone walking on thin ice. "Hello. I'm fine. I've been busy getting things settled. Thanks for asking." Claire's response came in seconds. "Mom, we need to talk. Can we come see you? We want to see your house," Michael wrote almost at the same time. "Ma, I'm sorry about the other day. You know how it is with mothers-in-law, but I'd love to visit. When can we?" I told them I was tired, that I needed a few more days to finish settling in, that I would let them know when I was ready for visitors. They accepted, but their messages kept coming. Questions disguised as concern. "How did you get that house? Did you buy it or are you renting? Do you need help with anything?" I sat on the patio with my coffee, watching the sun sink into the ocean, and let the truth hit me fully. It wasn't love I heard in their messages. It was curiosity. It was self-interest. It was that need to understand if I had something they could use. I had spent my entire life giving them everything. Time, money, energy, forgiveness. And they had learned to take without thanking, to receive without giving, to disappear when I needed them and appear only when it suited them. But this time was different. This time I had something they wanted, and that bothered them. It bothered them that they hadn't known. It bothered them that they had missed the housewarming. It bothered them that other people on social media were commenting and asking questions while they had no answers. One afternoon, while I was watering the plants on the patio, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the intercom, I saw Sharon, my friend from the old building. I buzzed her in immediately. She climbed the stairs, and when she reached the second floor and saw the inside of the house, she froze. "Eleanor," she whispered. "This is incredible." I made her tea and we sat on the patio. I told her everything. The inheritance from Julian, the messages from my children, the 3 days of silence, the way they had canceled my party and were now desperately trying to see me. Sharon listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment, looking at the sea. Finally, she spoke. "You know what I think, Eleanor? I think your children never expected you to have something of your own, something that didn't depend on them, something they couldn't control." Her words struck somewhere deep in my chest. "All your life, you've been the available mom, the one who lends money, the one who forgives, the one who understands, the one who waits. And they got used to that. They got used to you always being there, small, manageable, needing them more than they needed you." I felt tears forming but held them back. "And now it turns out you have a $2 million mansion, that you have something valuable. that you are someone important. And that scares them, Eleanor. Because if you have power, if you have resources, then they can't treat you the way they always have. I stayed silent because there was nothing to say. Sharon had put into words what I had been feeling but couldn't name. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But I'm not going to run and open the door just because they want to come in now." Sharon smiled. "Good. Very good." That night, after Sharon left, I stayed alone in the large living room with the lights off. Only the moonlight came through the picture windows, illuminating the new furniture, the white walls, the space that, for the first time in my life, was completely mine. And I accepted something I had been avoiding. My children had erased me. Not all at once, not with a dramatic event, but little by little, exclusion by exclusion, cancellation by cancellation, silence by silence. They had been erasing me from their lives while I clung to the illusion that we were a close-knit family. But the close-knit family only existed in my head. In reality, I was the convenient mom, the one who appeared in photos when needed, the one who lent money when they were in a bind, the one who babysat when they had no other option. But I wasn't a real part of their lives. I wasn't a priority. I wasn't important, until now. Now that I had something of value, now I was interesting. I got up from the sofa and walked to my bedroom. I opened the drawer of my dresser and took out an old notebook I had brought from my old apartment. In it, I had jotted down important dates for years, birthdays, anniversaries, family events. I turned the pages slowly. There they were, all the times I had bought gifts and received none. All the times I cooked for gatherings I wasn't invited to. All the times I set aside dates in my calendar for events that were canceled. All the times I gave and gave and gave, receiving nothing but excuses. It wasn't my imagination. It wasn't me being overly sensitive. It was a clear, documented, undeniable pattern. I closed the notebook and put it away again. But now I saw it differently. It wasn't just a record of pain. It was evidence. Evidence that this wasn't new. Evidence that my children's disinterest hadn't started with the canceled party. It had started years ago, and I had simply chosen not to see it. I lay down in my new bed, in my room with an ocean view, in this house that was mine by right, not by pity or obligation. And I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront them yet. I wasn't going to let them into this house until I fully understood what had happened, how I had gotten to this point, why they had excluded me so systematically. Because something told me there was more. Something told me this wasn't just carelessness or casual selfishness. There was something deeper, something I needed to discover before I decided what to do. I closed my eyes, listening to the sound of the ocean, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty for putting my needs first. I didn't feel the urge to run and fix things, to explain myself, to apologize for having feelings. I felt clarity, cold, hard, uncomfortable clarity. And I knew there was no going back. I had crossed an invisible line. I had woken up from a dream in which I was loved and landed in a reality where I was useful. And those two things were not the same at all. On Friday morning, exactly 1 week after the canceled party, someone knocked on my door. Not the buzzer for the main gate, but the front door itself, which meant whoever it was had managed to get past the security gate. I looked through the window carefully and saw a man in a gray suit standing at my entrance, holding a brown leather briefcase. I didn't recognize him. I went down the stairs slowly, phone in hand in case I needed to call security. I opened the door, leaving the chain on. "Mrs. Eleanor Vance?" the man asked in a formal but non-threatening voice. "Who's asking?" "My name is David Chen. I'm an attorney. I worked with Mr. Julian Thorne during the last years of his life. I apologize for showing up unannounced, but there is a matter related to the inheritance that I need to discuss with you. It's urgent." Julian's name made my heart speed up. I unfastened the chain and opened the door completely. David entered when I invited him in, and we sat in the living room. He placed his briefcase on the coffee table and looked at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. There was a hint of concern in his eyes. "Mrs. Vance, I don't know how to tell you this gently, so I'm going to be direct. I've been reviewing some documents related to Mr. Thorne's will, and I discovered something I believe you must know. I felt my stomach clench. Approximately 6 months ago, your daughter Claire attempted to contest Mr. Thorne's will. The world stopped for a second. What? Your daughter hired a lawyer and initiated legal proceedings, arguing that you had manipulated Mr. Thorne during his final years. She alleged that you had taken advantage of a sick, vulnerable man to obtain an inheritance that you did not deserve. I couldn't breathe. The words were reaching my ears, but my brain couldn't process them. The case didn't go anywhere, David continued. She had no evidence because there was no manipulation. Mr. Thorne was of sound mind when he drafted that will. We had medical evaluations, witness statements, everything documented. The judge dismissed the case 3 months ago. 3 months ago? I repeated weakly. Yes, and there's more. During the investigation, we discovered that your daughter had been making calls to Mr. Thorne's old acquaintances, trying to find someone who would testify against you. She even contacted nurses at the hospital where he was admitted. I put my hands to my face. This couldn't be real. It couldn't be happening. Why wasn't I told anything? The attorney handling the case at the time decided not to inform you to spare you the pain. He thought that if the case didn't proceed, which was the most likely outcome, there was no reason for you to suffer by knowing your own daughter had sued you. I disagreed with that decision, which is why I'm here now. David opened his briefcase and took out several documents. He placed them on the table in front of me. I recognized Claire's signature on some of them. I saw dates, official stamps, statements written in legal jargon. There's something else you need to know, David said in a softer voice. During the investigation, I spoke with several people close to you neighbors from your old building, colleagues, acquaintances. I did it to gather testimony about your character and your relationship with Mr. Thorne. I nodded, unable to speak. One of those people was Sharon, your friend. She told me some things that worried me. She said your children had been distancing themselves from you for years, that they frequently excluded you from family events, that you had mentioned feeling lonely and forgotten. The tears began to fall without my being able to stop them, and so I started to investigate a bit more, Mrs. Vance. I know it wasn't my place, but something didn't add up. Why would a daughter who is supposedly distant from her mother suddenly become so interested in an inheritance? Why would someone who doesn't visit you regularly now want to fight over a property? He took another document from his briefcase. I found this. These are financial records for your son, Michael. He took out a significant bank loan 8 months ago, a $250,000 loan that he used as a down payment for a real estate investment business. The business failed. Michael is in serious debt. I looked at the paper without fully understanding where this was going. And your daughter, Claire. She and her husband bought a new house a year ago, a $500,000 house. But according to the records, they are behind on their payments. They already have 2 foreclosure notices. David looked at me with a mixture of compassion and concern. Mrs. Vance, I believe your children knew about the inheritance before you received it. I believe they knew Mr. Thorne planned to leave you something, and I think they have been trying to control the situation ever since. But how could they have known? I asked in a broken voice. Mr. Thorne mentioned his intentions to several people during his illness. It wasn't a secret. Anyone who was close to him in those last months knew he planned to leave this property to you. And your children, Mrs. Vance, they asked. They asked? Yes. About a year ago, your daughter Claire called Mr. Thorne's office. She spoke with his secretary. She said she was your daughter and needed information about her mother's well-being because you were working for an elderly man. The secretary, thinking she was a concerned daughter, told her that Mr. Thorne was very grateful to you and had spoken of including you in his will. I felt the room begin to spin. After that call, everything started to change, didn't it? The distance became more pronounced, the exclusions more frequent, the canceled plans increased. I remembered the past year. I remembered how suddenly everything had become colder, how the calls became shorter, how the visits practically disappeared. I had thought they were busy, that it was modern life, that's just how things were. But no, it had been intentional. I believe, David continued carefully, that your children began to distance you deliberately. I think they wanted you to feel lonely, vulnerable, needy. I think the plan was that when Mr. Thorne died and you inherited, you would be so desperate to regain their closeness that you would give them whatever they wanted. But when they tried to contest the will, and it didn't work, he added, they changed strategies. They decided to wait. Wait for you to move in. Wait to get access to the property. Wait for the right moment to get close again. I wiped my tears with trembling hands. That's why they canceled your housewarming party, David said. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a test. They wanted to see how you would react. They wanted to keep you in that state of emotional need. If they had come to your party, you would have been happy, empowered, celebrating. They needed you to keep feeling rejected. But when they saw the photos of the mansion, I continued in a barely audible voice, finally understanding. They realized they had made a mistake. They realized this wasn't a modest little house. It was a valuable property. And then they wanted to come. Exactly. We sat in silence. The sound of the ocean came through the open windows, but I barely heard it. My mind was trying to process everything I had just discovered. My children hadn't just forgotten me. They had excluded me on purpose. They had manipulated me emotionally. They had tried to steal my inheritance. They had tried to destroy my reputation before a judge. All for money. All for a property. What do I do now? I whispered. David leaned forward, his eyes full of determination. Now, Mrs. Vance, you decide. You have all the information. You have all the proof. You have the power. The question is, what do you want to do with it? I looked at the documents on the table, my children's signatures on legal papers, trying to take away what was mine, the proof of their debts, the evidence of their manipulation, and something inside me, something that had been broken for years, began to harden. David stayed all afternoon. We reviewed every document, every piece of proof, every detail of what he had discovered. I took notes in a notebook with hands that no longer trembled. The initial shock had transformed into something different, something cold and clear. I need more information, I told him after reading everything for the third time. I need to know exactly what they've been doing. Every move, every lie, everything. David nodded. I can help with that. I have contacts. Discreet private investigators. We can obtain phone records, bank movements, emails if necessary. It's legal. Everything I'm proposing is completely legal. These are public records or information you have a right to request. We are not going to do anything shady, Mrs. Vance. We are just going to gather the truth. I gave him my authorization. David made a few calls from my living room. He spoke in a low voice to people who seemed to know exactly what to do. When he hung up, he looked at me seriously. Give me 1 week. 1 week and you will have a complete picture of what has been happening. That week was the longest of my life. I continued to ignore the insistent messages from Claire and Michael. Beyond a curt "I'm fine, I just need time." They became more desperate, more manipulative. Claire even sent me a photo of my granddaughter with a drawing that said, "I miss you, Grandma." I stared at that photo for long minutes, feeling the pain and rage mix in my chest. They were using the child. They were using my own granddaughter to manipulate me. Sharon came to visit me every 2 days. She brought food, sat with me on the patio, listened when I needed to talk. She didn't judge me. She didn't tell me what to do. She was just there, being the friend my own children never were. You know what hurts the most? I told her one afternoon as we watched the sunset. It's not that they wanted the money. It's that they were willing to destroy me to get it. They were going to call me a manipulator in front of a judge. They were going to say I abused a sick man. They were going to ruin my name, my reputation, everything I am. Sharon took my hand. But they couldn't, because the truth is stronger than their lies. On Wednesday of that week, David showed up with 2 thick binders. He placed them on the dining room table and sat across from me with a grave expression. "What you're about to read won't be easy, Eleanor. Are you sure you want to know?" "I need to know." He opened the first binder. Inside were phone records, message transcripts, screenshots of conversations. David had obtained everything legally through court orders related to the will contest case. I began to read, and with every page, I felt my heart break a little more. There were messages between Claire and Michael from 2 years ago. Mom is working for that old actor. Find out if he has money. Do you think he'll leave her anything when he dies? We have to be ready. There was a conversation where Claire told her husband, if Mom inherits something big, we have to act fast. She's emotionally weak. If we keep her at a distance, she'll be desperate to get us back. She'll give us whatever we ask for. There were messages from Michael to a friend. My mom is going to get $1 million house. The problem is I can't ask her for anything directly. She's stubborn. But if we make her feel lonely, she'll try to buy us with money. She always has. I read until the words blurred. David handed me a glass of water. I took a deep breath and kept reading. There were bank records showing that Michael had asked Claire for money to pay the loan he had lost. Get Mom to sign over power of attorney. Tell her it's to help her with legal paperwork. Once we have access to her accounts, we can manage the situation. There were emails between Claire and the lawyer she hired to contest the will. In one of them, Claire wrote, "My mother is a simple woman. She has no formal education. She convinced a vulnerable man to leave her a multi-million-dollar property. This is clearly undue influence." I had to stop. I closed my eyes, breathing deeply. A simple woman, that's what my own daughter had called me. As if I were stupid. As if I were worthless. "There's more," David said softly. "In the second binder, there's information about the exclusions." I opened the second binder, my hands trembling again. Inside were screenshots from a group text. A family group that I was not a part of. The group name was Vance Family, private. I read the messages. There were hundreds. "Are we inviting Mom to the baptism?" Michael asked. "No, she'll want to be in all the pictures, and then she posts them on Facebook with embarrassing comments," Claire replied. "It's Mom's birthday next week." "I know, but I'm tired of pretending. Let's just send flowers." "Mom is asking why we didn't invite her to Christmas dinner. Tell her there's not enough room. Or make something up. She'll get over it. My mother-in-law says we should include your mom more. Your mother-in-law doesn't have to deal with her. Mom is exhausting. Always wanting attention. Always needing validation. It's just easier to keep her at a distance." There were messages mocking my gifts. Mom sent me another handmade card. So cheesy. There were messages complaining about my calls. Mom called again. I let it go to voicemail. There were messages coordinating family events, specifically making sure I wouldn't find out. And worst of all, there were messages about the exclusion strategy. Claire had written, "If we keep her out of the family loop, she'll be so desperate that when she inherits that house, she'll do anything to get us back. It's basic psychology. The lonelier she feels, the more generous she'll be with us." Michael had replied, "You're right. Let's keep it up." I closed the binder. I couldn't read anymore. I got up from the chair and walked to the picture window. I stared at the ocean without really seeing it. My brain was trying to process what I had just discovered. It hadn't been my imagination. It hadn't been me being overly sensitive. It hadn't been an accident. It had been a plan. A conscious, deliberate, cruel plan. My own children had sat down to design a strategy to emotionally isolate me. They had created a family group chat without me. They had coordinated exclusions. They had turned my loneliness into a weapon to use against me. "Mrs. Vance," David said from behind me, "there's one more thing you need to know." I turned around. I didn't know if I could take any more. We found evidence that Claire tried to contact a notary 2 months ago. She wanted information on how to have someone name her as the sole beneficiary in case of death or incapacitation. She specifically asked about procedures when the person is over 65 years old. My blood ran cold. "It didn't go anywhere," David clarified quickly. "The notary told her she would need your explicit consent and your certified signature. But the fact that she tried means they were already planning the next step," I finished. "They didn't just want me to give them the house. They wanted to make sure that if I died, they would inherit everything." David nodded slowly. I sat back down in the chair. I put my hands on the binders, feeling the weight of all that paper, all that evidence, all that documented betrayal. "What do I do with this, David?" "That's up to you. You can confront them. You can keep your distance without saying anything. You can proceed legally to protect your assets. Or you can do all three." I stared at the binders for a long time. I thought about all the years I spent justifying their absences, all the birthdays I celebrated alone, telling myself they were busy, all the times I felt invisible and convinced myself I was exaggerating. But I hadn't been exaggerating. It had all been real. And worse, it had been intentional. "I want to do something," I said finally, my voice firm. "But I don't want to do it out of anger. I don't want to be impulsive. I want it to be perfect." David smiled slightly. "Then we'll plan this right. We'll gather every piece of evidence. We'll prepare everything carefully. And when you're ready, when the time is right, you will confront them with the truth in a way they cannot deny, manipulate, or escape." "How much time do you need?" "Give me 3 more days. I'll prepare a complete dossier with certified copies, notarized documents, all organized chronologically. When you finish reading it, you'll know exactly what to say and how to say it." I nodded. 3 days then. That night, when David left and I was alone again, I didn't cry. I didn't feel sorry for myself. I felt something different. I felt determination. I felt clarity. I felt power. My children had spent years playing with me, manipulating me, using me. But the game was over. Because now I knew the truth. And the truth, as Sharon had said, was stronger than any lie. The 3 days that followed, I spent in a strange state of calm. It wasn't peace exactly, but something colder. A quiet resolve that made me get up each morning with purpose. David had given me a specific task. Write down everything you want to say to them. Every feeling, every memory, every unanswered question. I sat on the patio with my notebook and began to write. At first, the words came out fast, full of pain and rage. But as the hours passed, something changed. The words became clearer, more precise, more powerful. I wasn't writing an emotional outburst. I was writing a testimony, a statement of facts that no one could refute. Sharon came on the second day and found me surrounded by papers. I showed her what I had been doing. She read in silence, and when she finished, she had tears in her eyes. "This is powerful, Eleanor. Very powerful." "It has to be," I replied, "because I'm only going to get one chance, one single conversation where everything comes to light. And there can't be any room for them to manipulate, to make excuses, or to make me doubt." "When are you going to do this?" "Soon. Very soon." On the 3rd day, David arrived with an even larger briefcase than before. We opened it on the dining room table and spent hours organizing everything. There were 3 binders now, each marked with a name. One for Claire, one for Michael, and one for me. "Everything is in these binders," David explained, organized chronologically. "Documentary proof, certified statements, official records, everything you need to prove every point you want to make." I reviewed the contents carefully. There were copies of the messages from the family group chat. There were records of the calls they never made to me. There was evidence of the events I wasn't invited to, with exact dates and screenshots of the social media posts. There were the documents from the attempt to contest the will. There were the financial records showing their debts. There was everything. "And now what?" I asked. "Now you decide how you want to do this. You can call them separately. You can get them together. You can do it in a neutral place or here in your home. You're in control, Eleanor." I thought for a long time. I imagined different scenarios. I imagined their faces, their reactions, their attempts to defend themselves. And then I knew exactly what to do. I'm going to invite them here. For a dinner. Both of them. At the same time, with their spouses. I'm going to prepare everything as if it's a celebration. As if I'm finally ready to welcome them into my new home. David nodded slowly. One last chance for them to be honest. Exactly. And when they fail, because they will fail, that's when I'll show them what I know. That afternoon, I sent a message to both of them. I kept the tone light, almost cheerful. "Kids, I'm sorry I've been so busy. I'm finally ready for you to see the house. How about Saturday for a dinner? We'll finally celebrate together." The replies came in minutes. From Claire, "Of course, Mom. We'll be there. It's about time." From Michael, "Perfect, Ma. You don't know how much I've wanted to see you." I read their messages without feeling anything. Not pain, not anger. Just that cold clarity that had settled inside me. I spent the next few days preparing everything with surgical precision. I cleaned the house until every surface shone. I bought fresh flowers for every room. I chose the menu carefully, each of their favorite dishes. I wanted everything to be perfect. I wanted them to have no excuse to say I hadn't welcomed them warmly. Sharon helped me with the preparations. As we cooked together on Friday afternoon, she asked me, "Are you sure you want to do this? There's no going back after tomorrow." "I know," I replied, chopping vegetables. "But there's no going back anyway. I've already seen the truth. I already know who they really are. The only thing I can choose now is whether I stay silent or if I speak. And you're going to speak. I'm going to speak." Saturday dawned with a clear sky. I spent the morning arranging the final details. I set the table with my best china. I placed candles. I tied napkins with cream-colored ribbons. Everything looked elegant, cozy, perfect. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I showered and got dressed. I put on a simple but nice dress, pearl gray. I put on light makeup. I did my hair carefully. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a different woman from the one I had been a month ago. There was something in my eyes, something hard and clear that wasn't there before. David arrived at 4 o'clock. He brought the binders, which we placed inside an antique cabinet in a corner of the dining room. No one would know they were there unless I decided to take them out. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready." At 5 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath and went to open it. Claire arrived first with her husband. She was carrying a bouquet of flowers and a huge smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mom," she said, hugging me, "you look beautiful." Her hug felt fake, mechanical, like something rehearsed. I let her in and led them to the living room. I watched her eyes scan every detail of the house, calculating, evaluating, appraising. She wasn't admiring my home. She was taking inventory. "This is incredible," her husband said. "How many square feet is it?" "I'm not sure exactly," I lied. I knew it was 4,000 square feet. I never measured. 10 minutes later, Michael arrived with his wife. The scene repeated itself. Hugs that didn't feel real. Exaggerated compliments. Questions about the house disguised as casual interest. I sat them all in the living room and served them wine. We talked about trivial things. The weather, the traffic, how hard it was to find parking. No one mentioned the canceled party. No one apologized for the weeks of silence before they knew my house was a mansion. I observed every gesture, every look they exchanged when they thought I wasn't watching. Claire would touch Michael's arm when he started to talk too much. Michael would signal with his eyes when he thought someone was saying the wrong thing. They were coordinated. They were following a plan. At 6 o'clock, I invited them into the dining room. They all made sounds of admiration upon seeing the set table. They sat in the places I indicated. I remained standing for a moment, looking at all of them from the head of the table. "Before we begin," I said in a calm voice, "I want to thank you for coming. I know you've been busy. I know your lives are complicated, so I truly appreciate you making the time to be here today." "Of course, Mom," Claire said quickly. "We always have time for you." "I'm sorry if you felt otherwise." I smiled but said nothing. I began to serve dinner. First course, a squash soup that Claire used to love as a child. Second course, roast chicken with potatoes that Michael always asked for. Fresh salad, freshly baked bread. Everything made with my own hands. With care, with precision, while they ate and talked among themselves, I barely touched my food. I watched them. I watched how they acted as if nothing had happened. As if the last few years of exclusion didn't exist. As if the message canceling my party had been just an insignificant misunderstanding. "Mom," Michael said after the second course, "I have to tell you something. I've been thinking about you a lot lately. I feel like we've drifted apart, and I don't like that. You're my mom. You're important to me." The words sounded rehearsed, like lines from a script. "I feel the same way," Claire added. "We should see each other more often. In fact, I was thinking we could make it a tradition. Monthly dinners here at your house. What do you think?" There it was. The real reason for their interest. Regular access to my house, to my space. To my property? "That sounds nice," I said noncommittally. "Who wants dessert?" I served the lemon pie I had prepared. The same one Claire asked for on her birthdays when she was little. She took a bite and closed her eyes. Mom, this tastes exactly like I remember. No one makes lemon pie like you. For a moment, just a moment, I felt a pang in my chest. An echo of the love I used to feel when my children were small and truly needed me. When I was their whole world and they were mine. But that moment passed quickly. Because the girl who loved this pie had grown up and become a woman who tried to steal my inheritance. The boy who ran to hug me when I got home from work had become a man who calculated how to manipulate my emotions for his benefit. I'm glad you like it, I said simply. We finished dessert in a relatively comfortable silence. We drank coffee. Claire started talking about her plans to remodel her house. Michael mentioned a new business idea. Their spouses shared anecdotes. All very normal. All very civilized. And then, when the plates were empty and the glasses almost finished, I stood up from my chair. There's something I want to show you, I said in a calm voice. Something important. I walked to the cabinet in the corner and took out the 3 binders. I placed them on the table, one in front of each of my children. I saw their expressions change. How Claire's smile froze. How Michael turned pale. Open them, I said. Take your time. Read everything. The silence that followed was as thick as concrete. Claire opened her binder first, with hands that were no longer so steady. Michael imitated her a second later. I watched their eyes scan the first page, then the second. Then they stopped turning pages because they understood exactly what they were looking at. Mom, what is this? Claire asked, her voice high-pitched. It's the truth, I replied calmly. Keep reading. Claire's husband leaned over to see the contents of the binder. Michael stared at the pages without blinking, his face growing redder. His wife put a hand on his arm, but he didn't even react. It's all in there, I continued. The messages from the family group chat I was excluded from. The records of events I wasn't invited to. The conversations where you coordinated how to keep me at a distance. The proof of the attempt to contest the will. The documents about your financial debts. Everything. This is an invasion of privacy, Claire said, slamming the binder shut. You had no right to investigate us. Everything in those binders was obtained legally, I replied, unruffled. They are public records, court documents, or information I am entitled to by law. Nothing you see there is illegal, unlike what you tried to do. Michael still hadn't spoken. He just stared at the papers in horror. I want you to explain, I said, sitting back down in my chair. I want you to tell me why. Why did you create a family group chat without me? Why did you spend years systematically excluding me? Why did you try to contest my inheritance, Claire? Why did you plan to manipulate my emotions to get access to this property? Mom, it's not what it looks like, Claire began. Then tell me what it is. Explain to me what it means when you wrote, verbatim. If we keep her out of the family loop, she'll be so desperate that when she inherits that house, she'll do anything to get us back. Explain that to me, Claire. Explain how that isn't exactly what it looks like. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I watched her search for something to say, some excuse, some justification. She found nothing. And you, Michael? I turned to my son. You told a friend that I was stubborn, but that if you made me feel lonely, I would try to buy you with money, because I always have. Is that how you see me? As someone who buys affection? Michael swallowed hard. Mom, I was angry when I said that. I didn't mean it. Angry about what? Because I received an inheritance that I earned with 15 years of honest work? Because someone finally valued my dedication and my loyalty? That made you angry? It's not that, he mumbled. Then what is it, Michael? Explain it to me. Because I have documents here that show you took out a $250,000 loan, that you lost that money in a failed business, that you are now in serious debt. And suddenly, when your mother inherits a valuable property, you want to get close again. How convenient. His wife turned pale. It was clear she didn't know everything. And you, Claire, I continued, you and your husband bought a $500,000 house. You have 2 foreclosure notices. You are about to lose that property. And so you decide it's the perfect time to contest the will of a man you didn't even know, to call me a manipulator in front of a judge. To say I abused the trust of a vulnerable person. We had a right to question that will, Claire said, finding some of her voice. It was suspicious that a wealthy man would leave everything to you. He didn't leave me everything. He left me this house. Only this house. And it wasn't suspicious. It was fair. I spent 15 years taking care of him. I was with him in his worst moments. I listened to him when no one else had time for him. I was loyal, dedicated, honest. And he recognized that. That's not manipulation, Claire. That's called deserving it. But you already knew, she accused. You knew he was going to leave you something, and you never told us. Why should I have told you? So you could plan how to take it from me even earlier? So you could start treating me the way you did? How did we treat you? Michael asked defensively. I stood up from the chair. I felt the rage I had been suppressing begin to rise, but I controlled it. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to lose control. I was going to be clear, precise, devastating. You excluded me from my own family. You created events without inviting me. You coordinated gatherings making sure I wouldn't know. You made a group text called Vance Family and left me out. You mocked my handmade gifts. You ignored my calls. You canceled plans over and over. You made me feel invisible, unnecessary, like a nuisance. I walked around the table as I spoke. My 65th birthday. You left me alone in that restaurant, waiting for an hour. My granddaughter's graduation. You didn't even tell me when it was. Last Christmas. You both canceled on the same day and left me alone with enough food for 10 people. My gallbladder surgery. Michael, you showed up when I was already in recovery and left 20 minutes later. Mom, we had things to do. Michael tried. What things? What things were more important than your mother coming out of surgery? What things were more important than spending Christmas with me? What things were so urgent that you couldn't even send an honest message? Neither of them answered. I'll tell you what happened. You didn't have things to do. You just didn't want to be with me. Because I wasn't fun. Because I had nothing to offer you. Because I was just the mom who lent money and never asked for it back. The mom who always understood, always forgave, always waited. I returned to my chair but didn't sit. I stood there, looking at them both. But when I inherited this house, when I suddenly had something valuable, then you wanted to come. Then you had time. Then Michael's mother-in-law could wait. How quickly you changed your minds when you saw the photos. It wasn't like that, Claire said weakly. Then how was it? Explain it to me. Explain why you canceled my housewarming party and 2 hours after seeing my photos on Instagram, you were desperate to visit. Explain that coincidence. Claire looked at Michael. Michael looked at the floor. Their spouses didn't know where to look. I'll tell you how it was, I continued. You thought I was going to inherit a modest little house. Something small, without much value. That's why you didn't care about canceling. It was just another boring party for Mom in an unimportant house. But when you saw it was a mansion, when you understood this was worth $2 million, then you got interested. Because it was no longer about me. It was about what I had. That's not fair, Michael said, looking up. Fair? You want to talk to me about fair? Is it fair that I spent years raising you alone after your father left us? Is it fair that I worked 3 jobs to give you an education? Is it fair that I sold my dad's car to give you the down payment on your house, Michael? Is it fair that you never paid me back that $5,000? Is it fair that I lent you more than $12,000 in total and never saw a cent of it back? Michael turned pale. His wife stared at him with wide eyes. It was obvious she didn't know about that money either. Is it fair that you called me a simple woman in legal documents, Claire? Is it fair that you tried to convince a judge I manipulated a sick man? Is it fair that you contacted nurses at the hospital, looking for someone to testify against me? Claire started to cry, but her tears didn't move me. I had cried too much, alone, for too many years. Is it fair that you planned this? That you sat down to design a strategy to keep me emotionally isolated so that when I inherited something, I would be so desperate to get you back that I would give you whatever you wanted? That's psychopathic, Claire. That's not just selfishness. That is calculated cruelty. It wasn't like that, she sobbed. We just wanted to protect ourselves. Protect yourselves from what? From your own mother. What did I ever do to you that you needed protection from? You've always been so demanding, Claire said, wiping her tears. Always wanting attention. Always needing validation. Always calling. Always asking. Always wanting to be involved in everything. Her words hit me, but they didn't break me. How terrible, I said in a soft, cold voice. How terrible that a mother wants to be involved in her children's lives. How demanding that she calls occasionally to see how they are. How needy that she wants to be invited to family events. You're right. I'm horrible. Mom, I didn't mean it like that. Claire tried. Yes, you did. You wrote it in messages. You said it in conversations. You thought it every time you decided to exclude me. And you know what's sad, Claire? The sad thing is that I would have understood if you had just been honest with me. If you had said, Mom, we need space. Mom, sometimes it's a lot. Mom, we're busy. I would have understood. It would have hurt, but I would have respected it. I walked around the table again, but you didn't do that. You lied. You pretended. You manipulated. You used me when it suited you and discarded me when it didn't. And now you're here, in my house, eating my food, drinking my wine, after spending years treating me as if I didn't matter. And you expect, what exactly? That I'll forgive you? That I'll pretend none of this happened? The silence was absolute. All that could be heard was the ocean outside and Claire's soft crying. I want you to leave, I said finally. I want you to take your binders, to read everything, to fully understand what you did. And then I want you to think about whether you really believe you deserve to be in my life. Mom, Michael began, standing up. No, I stopped him. Not now. No more excuses. No more lees. You're leaving. They left in silence. Claire crying, Michael with his head down, their spouses not knowing what to say. I watched them walk out the door, walk to their cars, start them, and disappear down the road that led from the hill. I stood in the doorway until their taillights were lost in the darkness. When I closed the door, the silence of the house enveloped me, but it didn't feel empty. It felt clean, like after a storm, when the air smells different, fresher, more real. Sharon arrived an hour later. I was still sitting on the patio, watching the black ocean under the moon. She didn't ask any questions. She just sat next to me and put her hand on mine. How do you feel? She asked after a while. I don't know, I answered honestly. I feel like I should feel something more. Pain, relief, rage. But I just feel tired. As if I've been carrying something heavy for years, and I finally put it down. That's exactly what you did. I slept soundly that night, for the first time in weeks. No nightmares, no waking up startled, without that knot in my stomach that had been with me for so long. When I opened my eyes the next morning, the sun was streaming through the windows, and I could hear the seagulls over the sea. I checked my phone. There were messages from both of them. From Claire first, Mom, we need to talk. Please. From Michael after. Ma, I'm so sorry for everything. Really? Give me a chance to explain. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready yet. The following days were strange. I moved through the house with a feeling of lightness I hadn't experienced in years. I painted, I read, I walked on the beach. Sharon came by often, and sometimes we would sit for hours without talking, just enjoying the quiet company. A week after the confrontation, Michael showed up unannounced. He rang the doorbell several times until I finally answered the intercom. Mom, please, just give me 5 minutes. I hesitated, but something in his voice sounded different. Less defensive, more broken. I bussed him in. He walked up the stairs slowly, as if his body were heavy. When he came in, I saw he had lost weight. He had deep, dark circles under his eyes. He wasn't the same confident man who had come to dinner. I read everything, he said, without sitting down. I read every page of that binder, over and over, and you're right, about everything. I have no excuses, Mom. I have no justifications. What we did was unforgivable. I stayed quiet, waiting. I let Claire lead. Her plans, her way of seeing things. She was always stronger, more decisive, and I just followed. I thought that made me less guilty, but now I understand it makes me just as guilty. Maybe more, because I knew it was wrong and I did it anyway. He ran his hands over his face. My wife didn't know anything. About the money I asked you for. About Claire's plans. About any of the things we did. When I showed her the binder, she almost left me. She still might. She told me I'm a coward. And she's right. "Why did you come, Michael?" I asked in a calm voice. "Because I need you to know I'm sorry. That I understand what I lost. Not the house, not the money. You. I lost my mom. I lost the person who was always there, who always gave everything, who never asked for anything real in return. And I lost her because I was selfish, cowardly, and cruel." I felt something in my chest loosen a little. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he continued. "I don't expect us to go back to what we were, because what we were had been broken for a long time and I didn't want to see it. I just needed to tell you that you're right. About everything. And that if one day, maybe in years, you decide to give me a chance to know you again for real, not as the son who takes, but as the son who learns to give, I'll be here." He turned to leave but stopped at the door. "One more thing. Claire isn't coming. She's still angry. She still thinks you're the bad guy. She still believes she was entitled to all of it. She's not going to change, Mom. And I'm not going to follow her anymore. I'm not going to be a part of that." When he left, I sat for hours processing his words. It wasn't enough. An apology didn't erase years of pain. But it was a start. A real acknowledgement of the truth. 2 weeks later, Michael returned. This time with his wife and my granddaughter. They didn't come into the house, they just rang the bell, and when I opened it, my granddaughter ran to me with a drawing in her hands. "Grandma, I made this for you," she said in her sweet little voice. "It's our new house, but with a path that goes to your house so you can visit us." The drawing showed 2 little houses connected by a colorful path. I felt tears threatening to fall. "It's beautiful, sweetie," I said, hugging her. Michael's wife looked at me with sincere eyes. "Mrs. Vance, I am so sorry I didn't realize what was happening. Michael has told me everything, and I want you to know that in our home you will always be welcome. Always. I didn't invite them in that day, but I accepted the drawing. I hung it on my refrigerator where I could see it every morning." The following months were a slow reconstruction. Michael came every 2 weeks, always asking first if he could visit, never assuming he had the right. Sometimes we just sat on the patio drinking coffee. Sometimes we walked on the beach. We didn't talk much about what had happened. It was too fresh, too painful still. But little by little, I started to get to know a different Michael. One who asked how I was and really listened to the answer. One who brought flowers for no special occasion. One who apologized when he canceled a plan and then actually rescheduled. One who admitted when he was wrong. For my granddaughter's birthday, they invited me to the party. It was small, in their backyard, just close family. When I arrived, Michael greeted me with a real hug. Not mechanical, not rehearsed, real. "Thanks for coming, Mom," he said. "It means everything to us." During the party, I watched. I watched how they interacted. I watched how Michael's wife included me in conversations. I watched how my granddaughter ran to show me every gift she opened. I watched how Michael would look for me with his eyes every once in a while, making sure I was okay. It wasn't perfect. There were still awkward moments. There were still scars. But there was genuine effort. There was real change. Claire didn't call for months. Her initial angry messages had stopped. The silence from her end was absolute. Michael told me she had confronted him, angry that he had betrayed her by speaking to me again. I told her the only betrayal was what we did to you, Michael told me, and that I wasn't going to be a part of it anymore. She hung up, and I haven't heard from her since. It hurt. She was my daughter. I had held her, raised her, loved her. But I also understood that I couldn't force change on someone who didn't want to change. I couldn't make her see the truth if she chose to believe the lie. One afternoon, 6 months after the confrontation, I was watering the plants on the patio when the doorbell rang. It was a courier service. They had a large envelope addressed to me. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were legal documents. Claire was suing me. She was arguing that I had manipulated Michael into staying away from her, that I was destroying her family, that she was entitled to a part of the inheritance because she was my daughter. I called David immediately. He came over that same afternoon, read the documents, and shook his head. This has no legal standing. It's a desperate attempt. It will likely be dismissed at the first hearing. Then why is she doing it? I asked, weary. Because she's angry. Because she can't accept that she lost control. Because she still thinks she can win something from this. He was right. The lawsuit was dismissed 3 months later. The judge was clear. There was no case. Claire had to pay the legal fees and received a warning about frivolous lawsuits. After that, nothing. Absolute silence from her. But my life didn't revolve around that silence. I had found something more valuable than the family that excluded me. I had found peace. I had found dignity. I had found Sharon, who came every week and had become the sister I never had. I had found a rebuilt Michael, making a real effort to be better. I had found my granddaughter, who now visited me regularly and filled the house with laughter. I had found, most of all, myself. That Eleanor who was always there but had been hidden under years of pleasing others, of justifying the unjustifiable, of accepting crumbs when I deserved the whole feast. One morning, a year after moving into the mansion, I woke up with the sun streaming through the windows. I made coffee and went out to the patio. The waves were breaking gently against the rocks. The seagulls were flying in circles. The sky was clear and bright. I sat in my favorite chair, the one that looked straight at the horizon, and took a deep breath. It smelled like salt, like flowers, like freedom, and I smiled. I smiled because I was alive, because I had survived, because I had chosen the truth over comfort, because I had chosen my dignity over the fear of being alone. And I discovered that I had never really been alone. I had just been surrounded by the wrong people. 2 years have passed since that dinner. 2 years since I opened those binders and changed the course of my life forever. Today, as I sit on this same patio watching the ocean that never stops moving, I can say something I couldn't say before. I am at peace. It's not the peace of someone who forgets. It's the peace of someone who remembers, but no longer bleeds. It's the peace of someone who understands that letting go is not the same as losing. Sometimes, letting go is the only way to win. Michael still comes, every week, without fail. He brought his family for Christmas last year, and this time it was real. Nothing forced, nothing acted. My granddaughter is 6 years old now and loves to look for shells on the beach in front of my house. She calls me every night before bed to tell me about her day. "Grandma, today I learned to write your name," she told me recently. "Look." And she sent me a photo of her notebook where she had written Eleanor in shaky letters, but full of love. Michael's wife has become important to me. She comes over alone sometimes, just to have coffee and talk. She tells me her worries, her dreams, her fears. And I really listen, not just wait for my turn to speak. We've built something genuine. Something that didn't exist before, because before I was just the convenient mother-in-law, not a real person. Michael has changed. Not overnight, but constantly and visibly. He started therapy a year ago. He told me with shame at first, as if it were a weakness to admit he needed help. I told him it was the bravest thing he had ever done. It's easier to stay broken than to do the work to put yourself back together, I told him. He cried that day, a clean, liberating cry. Now he talks differently. He acts differently. He no longer just takes, he also gives. He no longer just receives, he also offers. He no longer assumes I'll be available, but asks and respects when I say no. Because I've learned to say no. That word that used to be so hard for me to say now comes naturally when it's necessary. I haven't heard from Claire directly, but Michael tells me sometimes, carefully, like someone touching a wound that still hurts. She got divorced 6 months ago. She lost the house finally. She now lives in a small apartment with serious financial problems. Michael tried to help her, but she refused his help with rage. "I don't want anything from someone who betrayed his own sister for that woman," she told him. That woman. That's what she calls me now. I'm not even mom in her vocabulary. It hurts. I won't lie and say it doesn't. She is my daughter. I saw her born, watched her take her first steps, comforted her through her first heartbreaks. But I also understand that I can't force her to see what she doesn't want to see. I can't make her accept responsibility for something she still believes was my fault. She chose bitterness. I chose peace. And those two choices cannot coexist in the same space. I've learned that a mother's love doesn't mean putting up with anything. It doesn't mean being a punching bag where your children unload their frustration and you just take the hits with a smile. Real love, healthy love, requires boundaries. It requires mutual respect. It requires effort from both sides. And if someone, even your own daughter, is unwilling to make that effort, then the most loving thing you can do is step away. Not with hatred, not with revenge, but with the clarity of someone who knows you can't fix something when only one person is willing to try. Sharon is still my rock. She moved into an apartment near here 6 months ago. After looking at your beach all these months, I couldn't go back to my view of the parking lot, she told me, laughing. Now we have breakfast together 3 times a week. We walk along the coast. We go to the movies. We do the simple things that friends do, but that I never had time to do when I was obsessed with being the perfect mother. I've met new people, too. There's a group of women my age who meet on Thursdays at the town library. They talk about books, about life, about dreams they still have. At first, I was scared to join. What am I going to say? I asked Sharon. Hi, I'm Eleanor, and my kids excluded me for years, she laughed. Say, hi, I'm Eleanor, and I'm learning to live for myself. And that's exactly what I said. Now those women are my friends. Antonia, who lost her husband 5 years ago and is learning to travel alone. Alma, who at 70 years old decided to learn piano. Paola, who left an abusive marriage after 40 years and now says every free day is a gift. We all have stories. We all have scars. But we also have laughter, hope, and that silent understanding of those who have been through the fire and come out the other side. This house, this $2 million mansion that caused so much trouble, has become my sanctuary. But not because it's worth money, but because it's mine. Every decision here is mine. Every piece of furniture, every painting, every plant on the patio exists because I chose it, not because someone else approved. I've learned to enjoy my own company. Silence used to scare me. It made me feel like I had done something wrong, that I had to be surrounded by people to have value. Now, silence is my friend. It's in the silence that I think best, where I feel most clearly, where I reconnect with myself. I paint now. I started a year ago with an online course for beginners. I'm not good, my paintings are clumsy and disproportional, but they bring me joy. I have one hanging in the living room, a sunset over the ocean with colors that are too bright and waves that aren't the right shape. But it's mine. I made it, and every time I see it, I smile. I write, too. I have a journal where I put my thoughts, my memories, my reflections. At first, I wrote about the pain, about the betrayal, about the rage. But as the months passed, I started writing about other things, about the taste of coffee in the morning, about what the full moon looks like reflected on the ocean, about my granddaughter's laugh, about Sharon's friendship, about the second chance that Michael is building, day by day. I've learned that life isn't a straight line to happiness. It's a collection of moments, some beautiful, some painful, some completely ordinary, and they all matter. They all count. They all shape you. The scars I carry now are not weakness. They are evidence that I survived. They are maps of where I've been, and reminders of where I will never return. I will not go back to the place where my value depended on how much I gave. I will not go back to the place where my love was convenient, but my presence was a bother. I will not go back to the place where I justified the unjustifiable because I was afraid of the truth. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had remained blind, if I had never seen those binders, if David had never knocked on my door. Would Claire still be manipulating me? Would Michael still be taking without giving? Would I still be small, invisible, waiting for crumbs of affection? Probably. And I probably would have convinced myself that it was love. Because it's easier to believe a comfortable lie than to face a painful truth. But I faced the truth. And yes, it hurt. It hurt so much that there were nights when I wasn't sure I could keep breathing. But on the other side of that pain, I found something I didn't know existed. My own strength, my own voice, my own worth. Now I know that I don't need anyone to complete me. I am complete on my own. The people who enter my life now are additions, not solutions. They are company, not salvation. And that difference changes everything. This morning, as I was drinking my coffee on the patio, I saw a dolphin jumping near the shore. It stayed there for several minutes, jumping and playing in the waves. Sharon was with me, and we both sat in silence, watching that simple but beautiful show. "You know what I think?" Sharon said after a bit. "I think you're like that dolphin. Free, playing in your own ocean, with no one telling you where to swim." She was right. That's exactly what I am now. Free. And now, as I finish writing this, as the sun sets over the ocean, painting the sky orange and pink, I want to say something to you, the person reading this. To you who might be living what I lived. To you who might feel invisible in your own family. To you who justifies. Who forgives. Who waits. Who gives and gives without receiving. Listen to me. You have value. Not for what you give, not for what you do, not for how much you endure. You have value simply because you exist. And if there are people in your life who can't see that, who only seek you out when they need something, who exclude you when it's not convenient, then those people do not deserve the space they occupy in your heart. It is not selfish to set boundaries. It is not cruel to demand respect. It is not wrong to walk away from someone who hurts you, even if they share your blood. Family isn't just who gave you life. Family is who honors you, who sees you, who chooses to stay not out of obligation, but out of genuine love. And if you have to rebuild your family from scratch, with friends who become siblings, with acquaintances who become confidants, with strangers who show you more loyalty than your own blood, then do it. Don't stay in a place where you are tolerated, waiting for the day you will be celebrated. That day may never come. And while you wait, your life is passing by. Your life is now. Your value is now. Your peace is now. I am 69 years old. Some would say it's late to start over. But I'm telling you, it is never too late to choose yourself. It is never too late to let go of what hurts you. It is never too late to build the life you deserve. And you? Have you ever felt like they were trying to erase you from your own story? Are you living for others while forgetting yourself? Are you justifying today what you know in your heart is wrong? If so, I'm telling you the same thing I wish someone had told me years ago. Wake up, open your eyes, see the truth. And when you see it, even if it hurts, even if it's scary, even if it changes everything, choose the truth anyway. Because the truth hurts, yes, but lies kill. And you deserve to live.